Fear of speaking up, freezing in social rooms, and shrinking from opportunity are not character flaws. They're solvable patterns. You're Not Shy cuts through the shame and the myths, showing you exactly how to rewire avoidance into confident action. This book is a practical map. Small experiments, mindful habits, and cognitive shifts that rewrite your social wiring so you show up more, worry less, and connect with real ease. If you've ever thought, "I'll be braver one day," start today. This is the handbook that makes that possible. Chapter 1, Rethinking. Shyness. What it really is and isn't. Shyness is one of those words we fling around casually as if it were a single, simple trait. He's shy. She's shy. And we imagine a fixed personality stamped at birth. The first and most important correction this book makes is to separate shyness from character. Shyness is not a moral failing, it is not a defect of courage, and it is not destiny. Instead, shyness is best understood as a pattern of responses to social situations, an interaction between temperament, learning history, and contextual demands. Temperament gives some people a lower threshold for social alarm. Environment teaches others that mistakes in social settings bring high cost, and cognition shapes how we interpret ambiguous social cues. When those three factors align in a certain way, the result looks like shyness, avoidance, silence, heightened self-monitoring, and sometimes a physical cascade: raced heart, cold hands, tunneling attention. But crucially, the pattern is malleable. The book opens by dismantling common myths that keep people trapped. Myth 1. Shy people are inherently bad at social skills. Not true. Many shy people have strong social intelligence, empathy, and listening skills. They simply avoid practice opportunities that would turn latent skill into fluent performance. Myth 2. Shyness equals introversion. Introversion is a preference for lower stimulation environments. Shyness is about threat response. The two can overlap, but they are conceptually different and require different responses. Myth 3. You must stop being shy to be confident. The book reframes the goal away from a blunt eradication of shyness and toward a pragmatic expansion of range, being able to act effectively in the situations that matter to you. Instead of replacing identity, we add capacities. The chapter uses short case studies to illustrate how seemingly intractable shyness can unravel. A young woman who freezes in meetings is shown practicing brief, low-stakes verbal contributions until her nervous system learns that not speaking is not catastrophic. A retired man who avoided neighbors by day begins with a simple wave and two-sentence greeting. Over weeks, his avoidance erodes into small talk. Chapter 2, The Anatomy of Social Fear, Biology, Learning, and Cognition. If the first chapter clears conceptual ground, the second digs into mechanisms. How does a benign social moment, an introduction at a party, a meeting at work, become a physiological emergency for some people? The answer lives at the intersection of brain, body, and story. Biologically, humans evolved to treat social evaluation as important because group standing impacted survival. The amygdala and related threat networks respond to ambiguous social signals as if they were potential threats. For some people, that system is simply more reactive, a lower threshold, a quicker rise in autonomic arousal. The body responds with fight, flight, or freeze, and the subjective experience, worry, blanking, a desire to flee, follows. Learning processes layer on top of biology. If as a child you were mocked for speaking up, or if a teacher publicly embarrassed you, your nervous system encoded a very high cost for similar behaviors. Those early experiences become predictive templates. They tell your brain, inaccurately, what will happen in new but similar contexts. Cognitive features then shape interpretation. The shy person tends to practice mental simulations that emphasize negative outcomes, ruminations about awkward pauses, rehearsals of humiliation, and hypervigilance for disapproval. Two cognitive biases commonly emerge: the negativity bias, overweighting negative social cues, and mind reading, assuming you know others' judgments without evidence. The chapter emphasizes that these processes are interactive and mutually reinforcing. Biology amplifies attention to threat, learning supplies the content, cognition maintains the narrative. The practical takeaway here is diagnostic. Identify which layer predominates for you. Is your response primarily physiological? Your body floods before your thoughts arrive. Then learning calming micro-practices and graded exposure will be essential. Is your situation dominated by catastrophic inner scripts? Then cognitive restructuring and behavioral experiments will be the priority. Many readers find that multiple layers coexist, and the coherent plan combines interventions across all three. Chapter 3. Small experiments, big returns, the exposure ladder and practice design. This chapter translates theory into method. The core premise: get out of the paralysis of grand resolution and into the modest productivity of micro-experiments. Behavioral change follows the principle of small, repeated actions that produce disconfirming evidence. The tool the book advocates most strongly is the exposure ladder, a sequenced set of social tasks ordered by difficulty. Begin with low-threat steps that almost guarantee success and gradually increase intensity as your system habituates. A sample ladder for someone who freezes in group meetings might begin with 1. Making eye contact and smiling at colleagues. 2. Preparing a one-sentence comment to read if called on. 3. Asking one factual question in a small meeting. 4. Offering a brief opinion in a core team meeting. 5. Volunteering to present a 5-minute update. Each rung is rehearsed until discomfort diminishes by at least 30% before moving up. The chapter gives practical scripts for designing rungs and calculating risk. The goal is not heroic leaps, but steady desensitization. Another design principle introduced is intensity versus frequency. Short, frequent exposures beat rare, epic performances. 10 brief, slightly uncomfortable interactions per week yield more learning than one marathon presentation. The chapter also discusses how to structure practice to maximize learning. Set clear behavioral metrics, e.g., number of initiated conversations, seconds of speaking. Use video or audio recording to provide objective feedback, and pair practice with deliberate reflection. What went as expected, what surprised you, and what you would try differently. Chapter 4. Rewiring the inner critic. Cognitive techniques that actually work. Changing behavior without changing belief is fragile. The 4th chapter tackles the relentless inner critic, the voice that narrates errors as identity-defining events. Cognitive techniques are not about denial, they are about testing claims. The first technique is the behavioral experiment. Treat a fearful belief as a hypothesis and design an experiment to test it objectively. If you believe people will laugh at me if I ask a question and record the outcome. Most experiments reveal that consequences are far less catastrophic than imagined. The second technique is evidence collection, not in the abstract but with specific time-stamped notes. After a social event, write 3 facts, what happened, 3 interpretations, what you thought, and 3 alternative explanations, what else could explain it. This practice gradually trains your mind to distinguish between observation and interpretation. The third technique is cognitive reframing. Replace absolute statements with probabilistic language. Instead of "everyone thinks I'm incompetent," shift to "some people might disagree, many probably don't notice." This softening reduces emotional intensity and makes action possible. The chapter introduces 2 rapid interventions for in-the-moment rescue: tactical self-talk and perceptual shift. Tactical self-talk uses permission phrases, "I can speak for a minute and step back," or It's okay to stumble, to reduce catastrophizing. Chapter 5. Practical social skills, conversation, body language, and timing. Theory and courage will take you to the door, but social craft opens it. The 5th chapter is a pragmatic playbook of conversational moves, nonverbal signals, and timing strategies that make interactions flow. It begins with the architecture of conversation: opening, deepening, and closing. Openers should be simple, context-specific, and curiosity-oriented. A comment about the environment. This playlist is great. Do you know the artist? A sincere question. How did you get involved in this event? Or an offer of help. Can I grab you a coffee? People who overthink openings often create sterile scripts that sound rehearsed. The book advises reading the environment and choosing a natural, brief initiation. Deepening involves 2 powerful techniques: the 2-question rule, ask a follow-up question and then add a reflective observation, and the storytelling pivot, share a 30 to 60-second personal anecdote that reveals learning, not boasting. These moves invite reciprocity and intimacy without heavy vulnerability. The chapter provides numerous sample templates that readers can adapt to personality and culture. Body language gets equal attention because nonverbal cues often preface verbal content. The recommendations are straightforward: open posture, occasional nods, aligned feet and torso, moderate eye contact, and mindful proximity. Avoid invading personal space, but move closer when the other person signals comfort. Gestures that mirror energy level foster rapport. Stillness in moments of listening communicates gravity. Chapter 6. Building social confidence. Through rehearsal and role-play, confidence is not a mystical gift bestowed on the lucky few. It is a trained capacity. For people who experience shyness, confidence often feels like an unreachable trait because they haven't given their nervous systems enough calibrated practice to learn safety in social action. This chapter unpacks rehearsal and role-play as systematic training tools that convert theory into embodied skill. Rehearsal is not about rote memorization of lines or adopting a fake persona. It is about giving your nervous system experience of success under realistic conditions so that threat responses decline and competence rises. Start with microscripts, tiny, flexible verbal templates you can adapt in the moment. These are short 2 or 3 sentence opening lines, follow-up prompts, and graceful exits that are true to your voice. Instead of improvising from zero, you begin interaction with a learned pattern that buys cognitive bandwidth for authenticity. Role-play serves several purposes. First, it lowers stakes. Practicing a difficult scene with a trusted partner or coach allows you to make mistakes in a safe container and to receive immediate, constructive feedback. Second, it increases specificity. Many anxious simulations are vague catastrophes. Role-play converts mythic fear into testable moments. Third, it builds muscle memory. Your posture, breath, and gesture patterns become associated with successful interaction. Design role-play sessions thoughtfully. Use varied partners to avoid overfitting to one person's style. Practice with a friend, a mentor, a peer group, and even a mirror. Script scenarios at increasing difficulty, ordering at a busy cafe, joining a group conversation, asking for feedback in a meeting, and rehearse until discomfort drops by a measurable margin. Record sessions when possible, and watch them with a growth lens. Identify one micro skill to retain and one micro skill to change. Another rehearsal method is behavioral scripting plus improvisation. Start with a scripted opening and then allow authentic improvisation to grow out of it. This hybrid approach protects against mechanical delivery while providing scaffolding that prevents freeze. The chapter introduces short daily routines to embed rehearsal into life: 5 minutes of vocal warm-up, 10 minutes of simulated small talk, and a weekly 20-minute role play with post-practice reflection. Importantly, the chapter addresses the inner critic that often sabotages rehearsal. A mental checklist helps. Note one improvement in each practice, never more than one critique per session, and celebrate the attempt. Over time, repetition decreases the novelty of social situations, and your physiology learns that engagement does not equal catastrophe. In sum, rehearsal and role-play are not theatrical tricks. They are the laboratory where shy people translate intention into fluent social performance. Chapter 7. Designing a supportive social environment. Individual work is necessary but not sufficient. Environment shapes behavior powerfully. This chapter explores how to deliberately craft a social ecology that encourages growth rather than inadvertently maintaining avoidance. Start by auditing your circles. List the 5 people you spend the most time with and evaluate whether they energize you, drain you, or keep you static. People who normalize avoidance, those who reassure you in unhelpful ways or make excuses for your withdrawal, can be well-intentioned but ultimately preserve the status quo. Replace, or at least supplement, those influences with growth contacts, peers who model vulnerability, mentors who give specific challenges, and accountability partners who expect follow-through. Next, design micro-rituals that scaffold social practice into predictable rhythms. Weekly mastermind meetups, a monthly speech night with friends, or a neighborhood walk and talk system create repeated opportunities to act beyond comfort in a regulated context. Institutions also matter. Join clubs, volunteer groups, or learning cohorts where participation is structured and valued. Such settings reduce ambiguity and provide ready-made scripts for action. The chapter provides practical templates for inviting supportive people into your life. An email script to ask someone to be an accountability partner, a short agenda for a practice group, and norms for giving constructive feedback. Physical environment is considered too. Arrange your home and workspaces to make social practice easier. Host small gatherings, choose seating that invites conversation, and create visible cues, a whiteboard with weekly social goals that remind you to act. Importantly, cultivate compassionate pressure. Choose some relationships where you accept firm, loving push. Growth often requires being nudged beyond comfort by someone who trusts you enough to insist you try. Finally, set boundaries with relationships that consistently erode your confidence. Limit time with naysayers and cultivate distance when necessary. By designing a social environment intentionally rather than passively accepting whatever appears, you create a stable ecosystem where experiments are safer, progress is visible, and shy patterns are less likely to regenerate. Chapter 8. Turning Rejection. Into useful data, rejection is inevitable in social life. No level of skill grants total immunity. The problem is not rejection itself, but the interpretation you give it. Shy people often treat rejection as identity evidence. I am unlovable, which escalates avoidance. This chapter reframes rejection as diagnostic data and teaches concrete rituals to extract learning rather than collapse. First, depersonalize. Practice a neutral narrative that separates the behavior from the self. When someone declines an invitation, the immediate script is, "This decision reflects X constraint, not a judgment on my worth." Second, institute a short rejection debrief protocol, 3 factual observations, what happened, 2 plausible alternative explanations, contextual factors, and 1 specific lesson to test next time, a change in timing, wording, or audience. This converts emotional fallout into a compact learning loop and preserves momentum. Third, normalize volume. Increasing the number of attempts reduces the expected cost of any single negative outcome. Persistent, distributed outreach ensures that one no is one datum among many. The chapter encourages deliberate exposure to low-risk rejection to build tolerance, short interactions where declination is possible but harmless, sending 5 cold emails, asking 3 people for feedback and expecting varied responses. Over time, your threshold for distress rises. Rejections stop operating as catastrophic signals and become routine input. Another useful tactic is rejection rehearsal. Role-play scenarios in which you are told no and practice graceful responses. Rehearsal reduces surprise and increases emotional regulation. The chapter also addresses social media era rejection, likes, replies, and public critique. Set rules for engagement, limit checking frequency, choose a small circle to test ideas before public launch, and schedule periodic digital Sabbaths to prevent reactive identity hits. Chapter 9. Advanced Public Performance, Presenting, Networking, and Persuasion. Once you have built foundational confidence, the next step is to scale your social capabilities into higher stakes arenas, presentations, networking events, and persuasive conversations. This chapter translates earlier techniques into strategies for impact at scale. For presentations, apply the rehearsal rules at scale, chunk the talk into sections, master the opening and the closing, which carry disproportionate persuasive weight, and practice in progressively public contexts. Learn simple framing tools, 1-sentence takeaways, 3-point structures, and vivid examples that reduce memory load while increasing clarity. Use stagecraft, breathwork for steady voice, deliberate pacing to allow absorption, and visual anchors to cue transitions. For networking, the chapter recommends a value-first posture. Enter conversations with one helpful question or resource you can offer, which flips the usual scarcity mindset and creates reciprocity. Have 3 to 5 meaningful questions ready that are not transactional but discovery-based. What project has you most excited? And learn the art of follow-up. A brief note within 24 hours referencing a specific part of the conversation that cements connection. Persuasion is treated ethically. Align proposals with the other person's priorities, create clear, low-risk next steps, and use stories to enable mental simulation. Chapter 10. Sustaining Growth, Habits, Identity, and Lifelong Social Flexibility. The final chapter shifts from intervention to maintenance. Social competence is not a project with a finish line, but a living practice that requires ongoing attention. The chapter synthesizes earlier lessons into a sustainable architecture, habit ladders, identity maintenance, and adaptability practices. Habit ladders convert ad hoc efforts into predictable progress, daily micro-practices, 1 initiated conversation a day, weekly targets, 2 rehearsals and 1 public attempt, and monthly benchmarks, a presentation or event. Identity maintenance involves regular reaffirmation of the new script. You remind yourself who you are by acting accordingly. Short morning rituals, 1 sentence of identity affirmation followed by a small behavioral proof, anchor the day. The chapter stresses recovery rituals too. Social exertion can be draining. Plan recovery periods intentionally. Quiet evenings, solo projects, physical exercise, so social growth does not burn you out. Flexibility is the final principle. Contexts change, cultural norms evolve, and your social skills must adapt. Chapter 11. Deep relationships, intimacy, vulnerability, and the social courage to connect. Intimacy is the crucible where social courage is tested most honestly. For shy people, relationships present both the greatest reward and the sharpest risk. The possibility of deep connection sits beside the chance of exposure and disappointment. This chapter reframes intimacy from a hazard to a practiced capacity, showing that deep relationships are built through repeated small acts of vulnerability consistent responsiveness, and honest repair. Vulnerability is often miscast as oversharing or dramatic confession. Real vulnerability is calibrated. It is the gradual, reciprocal revealing of feelings, boundaries, and needs in a way that invites safe mutual exchange. Start with micro-vulnerabilities, brief admissions that are proportionate to the relationship stage. In a new friendship, a micro-vulnerability might be, "I get nervous before social events," said in a tone of curiosity rather than apology. In a long-term partnership, it might be a confession of a recurring fear coupled with a constructive request. The structure matters. Pair vulnerability with an invitation, a question that invites the other to respond, and with an explicit repair plan if necessary, how you'll handle miscommunication. Responsiveness, consistently showing up when the other person signals need, turns intermittent trust into durable security. Practical rituals include the weekly check-in, 10 minutes to name highs, lows, and one need, the delayed response policy, commit to a follow-up, within 24 hours when immediate action is not possible, and the gratitude practice, one specific appreciation each week. Repair is the unsung hero of intimacy. Relationships will produce ruptures. What differentiates resilient pairs is the ability to make prompt, proportional, and sincere repairs. Acknowledge the harm, offer a concise apology, propose a concrete fix, and follow through. For shy people, repairs are doubly important because avoidance often leaves wounds unaddressed. Rehearse brief repair scripts so you can act calmly when tensions arise. Another theme is emotional bandwidth management. Deep relationships require energy. Protect yourself with predictable recovery practices so you can be fully present when you choose to be. Learning to ask for the kind of support you actually need, listening versus advice, time versus problem solving, reduces misattunement and prevents compassion fatigue. Finally, the chapter tackles the specific anxieties around rejection in close relationships. Use data-driven de-escalation, note patterns rather than single events, and test interpretations through gentle curiosity rather than accusatory statements. Over time, intimacy becomes less about fear and more about practice. Repeated small acts of honest, bounded vulnerability plus consistent repair create a gravity that draws people in and sustains connection through ordinary life's inevitable challenges. Chapter 12. Navigating the Workplace, Presence, Influence, and Political Savvy. The professional arena demands a distinct blend of social skill. Competence must be conveyed, alliances forged, and influence exercised ethically. For shy professionals, the workplace can feel like a spotlight that magnifies small faux pas into career setbacks. This chapter offers tools to convert reflective strengths, thoughtfulness, listening, reliability into visible assets while minimizing exposure to unnecessary risk. Visibility does not equal performative self-promotion. It is the deliberate communication of contribution and readiness. Start with a visibility inventory, list 3 recent outcomes you contributed to, and identify the stakeholders who should know. Communicate succinctly, an email summary, a brief update in a meeting, or a documented success metric so your work becomes part of the team narrative. Influence follows competence plus trust. Build both through micro-advocacy. Offer to take on small, cross-functional tasks that let others see your problem-solving, then summarize outcomes and lessons for broader audiences. Networking at work is not a social game but a functional one. Cultivate lateral allies, peers who amplify your impact, upward sponsors, leaders who will open doors, and downward mentees, people you develop who increase your reach. Political savvy is ethical when it focuses on coalition building and problem solving rather than power grabbing. Learn the decision rhythms of your organization, who cares about what and when decisions are taken, and position your inputs accordingly. Meeting readiness is crucial for shy professionals. Prepare 2 concise points, insight plus question, for each agenda, and use the prepared comment technique to speak briefly but powerfully early in a meeting. Your voice will be perceived as thoughtful rather than tentative. Negotiation skills translate as well. Rehearse data-backed requests, frame asks in terms of mutual benefit, and practice silence after making your proposal. Many people fill it with concessions. Lastly, career momentum requires intentional rituals. Quarterly reviews of network health, a portfolio of impact stories, and a small visibility project every 6 months, a short internal talk, a write-up circulated to leadership. With these systems, shy professionals can translate competence into noticed contribution without betraying their temperament. Chapter 13. Friendship, Community, and the Art of Being. Friendships and community are the scaffolding of satisfying social life, but they require deliberate cultivation. For those prone to shyness, friendships often start slowly and suffer from underinvestment. This chapter provides a replicable blueprint: initiation, cultivation, and stewardship. Initiation is low friction and frequent. Attend recurring small group meetings, book clubs, workshops, volunteer in roles with brief but structured interaction windows, or use mutual introduction scripts that reduce awkwardness. My friend X is also into Y, you two should meet. Cultivation turns contact into closeness through regular micro-rituals, monthly hangouts, shared projects, or collaborative learning efforts that create predictable opportunity for growth. Use the 3-touch rule. After initial contact, plan 3 follow-ups within the next 6 weeks. Message, invite, shared resource to convert acquaintance into friend. Stewardship maintains bonds, celebrate milestones, show up for small emotional needs, and practice reciprocity by offering help in the forms your friends prefer. Community building scales these principles. Design experiences that lower social friction, structured activities, rotating roles, explicit norms, and invest in culture, shared missions, weekly rituals, and accessible onboarding for newcomers. For shy people, leadership within community can be a powerful growth lever because organizing creates systems that externalize the social work. Running a small project or hosting a regular salon lets you create social contexts where your strengths, planning, listening, curating shine. Finally, the chapter addresses loneliness management. Diversify your belonging portfolio across different groups, interest-based, role-based, geographic, so a single relationship's ebb does not create existential loss. Friendships require time and intentionality. Treating social life as a set of small, cumulative investments transforms distant hopes into active belonging. Chapter 14. Raising Social Confidence in Children and Modeling. Courage, parenting, and mentorship offer unique leverage to reshape future social patterns. Children's social pathways are formed by early scaffolding, modeled behavior, structured exposure, and language around emotion. This chapter outlines evidence-based practices parents and mentors can use to help children develop social confidence without coercion. First, model calibrated vulnerability. Share age-appropriate narratives of failure and recovery to normalize growth. Children who see adults attempt hard things and repair afterwards learn the script of resilience. Second, design exposure ladders for kids. Practice saying hello at the bakery, introduce one question at a play date, or rehearse a short show and tell. Make rungs concrete and celebrate attempts rather than flawless outcomes. Third, craft conversational coaching into daily life. Teach children simple openers, how to read facial cues, and how to end interactions gracefully. Use players' rehearsal, role-play awkward scenarios in a fun, consequence-free context. Chapter 15. Mastering Ambiguity. Social Flexibility in a Changing World. The modern social landscape is fluid, cultures mix, norms shift, and digital channels constantly reconfigure how we connect. Social flexibility, the ability to adapt style to context without losing core authenticity, is the final advanced skill for sustained confidence. This chapter teaches meta strategies, cultural listening, context mapping, and adaptive scripting. Cultural listening means approaching a new group with curiosity and humility. Observe norms, tone, humor, turn-taking, ask permissive questions, and default to mirroring before diverging. Context mapping is a quick internal checklist: audience size, stakes, desired outcomes, and available rituals that informs your approach, short form, warmth in a networking mixer, structured argumentation in a policy meeting. Adaptive scripting provides modular lines you can deploy and remix, openers, reframes, repair phrases that preserve your voice while fitting the environment. Digital fluency is included. Adapt message length, medium, and timing to channel expectations, concise private messages for DMs, threaded, thoughtful posts for forums. The chapter also emphasizes curiosity as a stable anchor. When norms shift, ask questions, seek feedback, and iterate publicly in low-risk spaces. Chapter 16. Managing Social Energy. When to push and when to protect. Social growth requires energy, and energy is a finite resource. For many people who struggle with shyness, the temptation is to either overcommit, trying to force rapid change through sheer will, or to underinvest for fear of depletion. Neither extreme is sustainable. This chapter teaches the reader to treat social energy as a measurable resource and to make strategic decisions about how to allocate it. Start by developing a simple energy ledger. Track social exertion, events attended, conversations initiated, presentations given, and recovery, hours of sleep, solitary restorative activities, light, exercise. Patterns emerge quickly. You'll see which activities leave you charged and which leave you hollow. Use that information to build a portfolio of social actions: high impact, low cost moves, a quick thoughtful message to a contact; medium impact regular commitments, a weekly meetup; and high impact but rare investments, a conference keynote. Plan your calendar so that high impact social efforts are buffered by recovery days. The chapter also introduces the concept of selective engagement. Not every invitation deserves a yes. Apply simple triage. Will this interaction move you toward a meaningful relationship, a significant skill, or a joyful experience? If not, decline or delegate. Saying no becomes a skill that protects your capacity while preserving integrity. Offer an alternative rather than a blunt refusal. Another important element is the rhythm of exposure density. Rather than trying to cram numerous high-stakes social experiences in a short period, stagger challenges across a month and vary intensity so your nervous system can integrate learning. Finally, cultivate small, on-the-spot recovery practices, breathing anchors, mini walks, brief journal prompts that restore equilibrium between interactions. Managing social energy smartly turns courageous behavior into a sustainable lifestyle, not an occasional heroic episode. Chapter 17. Social Technology. Using digital tools without losing presence. Digital spaces multiply opportunities but also complicate cues and stamina. This chapter navigates how to use social technologies, messaging apps, social networks, video calls, to extend social practice without undermining in-person skills. The first rule is purpose. Assign each platform a function: discovery, maintenance, deep connection, so you stop treating them as a single amorphous feed. For example, use a forum or Twitter/X for idea surfacing, WhatsApp for small group coordination, and longer-form posts or newsletters to synthesize thinking and attract thoughtful responses. Next, design channel-specific scripts. Messaging has different norms than in-person chat. Shorter messages, explicit closure phrases, and clear proposed next steps prevent endless reactive loops. For video calls, practice camera framing and vocal pacing. For text, learn the economy of tone. Emoticons used sparingly, clear question prompts, and early time zone clarity for scheduling. The chapter also addresses the social costs of always-on availability. Set zones of no notification time and a 24-hour response norm for non-urgent threads. This prevents digital whirlwinds from eroding bandwidth for real-world connection. Another key skill is digital hospitality, how to create online spaces where people feel invited and seen, thoughtful comment replies, curated shared resources, and periodic synthesis threads that highlight contributors. Finally, use analytics as gentle guidance rather than absolute value. Who responds, who engages, and what content sparks conversation can inform where to invest attention. When used intentionally, technology becomes a force multiplier for shy people, scaling reach and practice opportunities without hollowing out presence. Chapter 18: Creativity and Play. The Unexpected. Tools for social flourishing. Play is underrated in adult life, yet creativity and play are among the most efficient ways to reduce social threat and expand expressive range. This chapter encourages readers to reclaim play as deliberate practice, improv classes, collaborative creative projects, and small experiments that invite lightness. Play lowers stakes because it reframes actions as exploration rather than identity performance. A failed joke in a rehearsal becomes data, not character evidence. Improv exercises, for instance, teach active listening, quick associative thinking, and comfort with being off balance, all directly relevant to social fluency. Creative collaboration, writing a short piece with a friend, making a tiny film, or building a shared playlist create scaffolded interactions with clear outputs that remove ambiguity and provide shared pride. Play rituals can be micro, a weekly silly challenge among friends, a hobby group that meets for 45 minutes, or a low-stakes game night. These formats cultivate spontaneity and humor, both of which lubricate social friction. The chapter also connects creativity to identity expansion, experimenting with new expressive modes, stand-up snippets, short storytelling, or a small visual project allows shy people to discover facets of themselves beyond the old scripts. Finally, the author encourages the reader to intentionally schedule play as part of development, because when play is incidental, it never happens. Framing play as practice converts joy into durable social competence. Chapter 19. Crisis, setbacks, and the long term. View: progress is rarely linear. There will be regressions, periods of illness, life transitions, bereavement, or unexpected stress that temporarily shrink social range. This chapter normalizes setbacks and offers a recovery architecture. First, build a triage plan, immediate stabilizers, rest, hydration, a trusted call, short-term coping, reduce exposure density, simplify routines, and re-entry steps, small social tasks that provide gentle evidence of competence. Keep an emergency script list, pre-tested, low-effort interactions such as thanking an acquaintance for a past favor or sending a "thinking of you" message that help re-establish continuity without draining energy. Second, maintain a growth file, a running document of past wins, supportive messages, and evidence that your capacity is larger than the setback implies. Consult it when doubt returns. Third, practice compassionate recalibration, accept slower pacing temporarily, and treat the season as data rather than failure. Finally, cultivate systems that buffer against future crisis, diversified social ties, not all your belonging in one place, financial and physical health practices that sustain baseline resilience, and an ongoing relationship with a few people who can offer steady perspective. The long-term view reframes social skill building as folding into a life that endures hardship by design. Setbacks will not be erased, but they become part of a broader story of growth rather than a stop sign. Chapter 20, Flourishing, Socially, Integration, Purpose and Legacy. The final chapter synthesizes the book's lessons into an integrated vision of social flourishing where competence and character converge. Flourishing is not merely about being more outgoing, it is about creating a life whose social texture aligns with values, meaningful work, chosen family, and purposeful contribution. The chapter maps 3 pillars. First, integration. Stitch social practices into your identity through daily rituals, public commitments, and visible artifacts, projects, clubs, or writings that make your growth legible to others. Second, purpose. Direct social effort toward contributions that matter, a mentorship program, community service, or consistent group work, so that social energy is invested with meaning rather than mere visibility. Purpose sustains action when novelty fades. Third, legacy. Consider who you are shaping, children, mentees, or a community, and design small transfer mechanisms, documented practices, mentorship ladders, or simple rituals that others can inherit. The chapter closes with a humane admonition. The point is not to become non-shy at all costs, but to build an adaptive, generous, and resilient social life that reflects your values. When you move from avoidance to authorship, designing a life you want to inhabit, you shift from shrinking to flourishing.